Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Healing and Freedom Journey. I'm Mark DeJesus, your brother from another mother, equipping your journey to experience greater mental, emotional, and relationship health. Today, I want to talk about the subject of the Christian, mental health, and your job, the workplace. And I'm going to talk about some principles that I found to be very helpful to the journey and to the process of growing and healing while also working in the workplace where it can get a bit toxic. There can be a misalignment of values where you don't see the values that are important to you as a Christian being emphasized, appreciated, or even respected. And so I want to just share some fundamental things that we can be aware of in the journey of, okay, I'm a believer and I got some mental health issues that I'm aware of. And because I believe all of us as believers need to be aware of, we're somewhere on the spectrum of battles that we have as far as emotions, as our mind. But you realize, okay, I've got these battles and struggles, but I'm also navigating some areas in the workplace that I'm trying to figure out. And so I get questions that come in, and one of them I'll address here at the end. So what does it look like to work in the real world, be a believer, but you're also working through living mentally, emotionally, relationally healthy? Some of what I want to share with you today is some exhortation. I want to be a brother from another mother to encourage you in your work and what you do for work, because you spend actually, if you have a 9-to-5 job and you don't count sleeping, you spend more time at work than you do at home. So I do think that we should be talking a lot about how to navigate the life of the workplace in healthy ways. I'm going to give you some observations, some things I've learned and what's been helpful for my own journey. The first thing I want to encourage you in is that you need to see where you work. You need to see that as a place of ministry. And what is ministry? Ministry is a believer allowing God to use them to bless, to be a vessel of help, support, encouragement. The list goes on and on. We tend to see ministry as somebody that has an official position. You have a ministry platform. And sometimes we glorify platform ministry so much. And I want to tell you, that kind of focus is overrated. People are trying to chase these big things. I got to have this position or this thing. And what I'm doing now, being a blessing to the worker that's next to me in the next cubicle, that's not real ministry. Or just doing my job effectively, that's not ministry. And I run into countless believers that are obsessive compulsive, that at their job, they're only ministering if they're giving the gospel message and getting somebody to say the sinner's prayer. And it has caused a lot of unnecessary damage because we're actually trying to get people saved compulsively versus being led by the Spirit and spending our energies actually just doing our job effectively. So I actually believe that people that are in the trenches at work can have more effective ministry impact than maybe someone who stands on a stage at a church and gives sermons. Because many people in church life can live in a bubble. Whereas when you're out and work in the workforce, you're in the trenches of what people are facing, what they're going through. You see the brokenness, you see the struggles, you see the battle. And so we have to begin to see our whole life really as ministry, where you live, where you work, because it's your life that's the message. And we tried to push a message instead of just letting your life demonstrate the message. So being at your workplace and seeing it as a ministry does not mean you're sitting there preaching Jesus and all day long. In fact, it would be better if you actually practice wisdom of knowing when to share the valuable pearls that you carry. That's actually the greater thing, and focusing each day on doing your job well. And I think that's the second thing I want to share is your ministry at work really starts with doing your job with excellence, growing in your job, developing your skills there. In the book of Daniel, Daniel is a fantastic example of someone who worked in an ungodly system. I mean, we're talking Babylon. We're talking Nebuchadnezzar. We're talking the biblical picture of wickedness, right? But David focused on his skills and on what he was able to manifest in the quality and excellence of being a follower of God and letting that manifest. And then when push came to shove, there were certain moments where he said, no, I can't do that. That violates my moral standing, my the law of God that's in my heart. It violates that. He knew where to draw the line, but he also knew where to pick his battles with wisdom. And he wasn't nitpicking and chasing because there was wickedness all around him. Ungodliness, sorcery, and every kind of opposition towards the people of God there. But yet he knew how to walk with wisdom. In fact, when the king evaluated him, they said that he's 10 times better than the magicians, the astrologers that were working. You can find that in Daniel chapter 1 and verse 20. It's amazing. And so there are many times that believers can get so we think we're being spiritually minded by trying to bring a message of Jesus, or we're focused on trying to get people to say a sinner's prayer, or we're trying to use it as a place to bring Jesus in, and we negate just fruitful day-to-day doing your job well, doing it with excellence. So I just seen it too much where Christians are preaching Jesus and then they're late for work all the time. They're preaching Jesus and acting like they have an amazing spiritual life, and they're not authentic, they're not humble, not showing that, hey, I'm going through stuff too, because being a believer doesn't mean you have to put some fabricated Jesus kind of sign on all the time. Believers have problems. Believers have struggles. Believers have things that we go through. Believers have mental health battles we struggle with. So it's more about living an authentic life. But I also want to say, too, at the workplace, your primary role is not to make friends. Your primary role is to do your job well. Now, if friendship opens up, connection opens up, by all means, right? Because you want to build rapport with people, and out of relationship is where God works. We often want to shove a message first, and it's really about building relationship. We have to accept the reality that places that we work and interact don't necessarily share the values that we share, but God has set us as light. And sometimes when a light shines, it's not by what you say, it's just your life demonstrating it. And there is a pattern in society where the value of just simple, hard work, of being diligent to what is in front of you, being diligent to be on time, to give value to the company that you work for, that is drifting, where people just don't show the heart and care for the organization. So let the focus be, which will lay me into the foundation now of some other areas I want to exhort you in. Let your job be a place where you develop and enhance your skills. Many of you work for larger companies that have a lot of training and a lot of opportunities to learn. And in many cases, you can get paid while get trained, or you get free training. And if you see that wherever you are in your job is development to develop your skills. For example, many of you have been blessed by the books that I've written. Over the years, I find my skill getting better and better in my writing, and there's a lot of difference in my current writing versus writing that I did many years ago. Well, one of the seasons of my life where my writing actually got developed, I was working for someone who had a tech company and very successful. And I was working on website and working with writing of biographies and just working on editing and writing material. And interestingly enough, during those seasons, I'd be driving. It was a long distance to drive to work. I thought I was going to be developing my ministry that God called me to, because I had left a traditional pastoring role and had started a ministry. Thought I was going to go in a certain direction. It didn't happen. I feel like, I'm in the wrong place. God, where are you? And I was actually right where I needed to be. And in that season, I took advantage of the on-the-job training of enhancing my writing and what to look out for and editing, and it birthed many of the books that I've written today. came out of that time, and even a passion for writing, because I didn't have a passion for writing growing up. I hated writing, but it bubbled up down the road as I just took advantage of opportunities. And I want to encourage those of you out there. Sometimes we're like trying to find the perfect job or the perfect thing, and we don't take just what's in front of us, the opportunity in front of us, because this is where you can take advantage of not only training of skill, this is where you can actually work on your relationship skills, because mental health is enhanced when we learn to practice relationship interaction. It's in the beauty of learning how to talk, how to listen. Opportunities to work through social anxiety. So many people struggle with social anxiety, social awkwardness, or spinning about conversations they have, or spinning about their work, right? And a lot of what we need is actually practice. We need to practice. So when I talk about skills, I'm not just talking about your work skills. I'm talking about your emotional skills. Learning how to interact with people. You don't necessarily agree with everything, but you go, you know what? There's some strife in there. I don't need to pick a fight in that. And I don't need to get lost in all those arguments and things. I'm here to develop my skills, and I want to learn how to relate in healthier ways, right? So take advantage of the opportunities of where you're at. I want to exhort you that, and I know you want to hear some mental health stuff, but this is areas where we learn to enhance our mental health, and that's to the best of your ability. Develop a healthy relationship with your boss and coworkers. It starts by, number one, have a heart of respect for your boss, and many bosses, it's hard to have respect for them because you see a lot of their issues and struggles and even incompetence. Ask yourself, God, give me a heart for my boss, not in a way of where I'm saying, sin is okay or anything like that, but just having a heart of respect, because what I've found and discovered is that if you just stay the course and keep growing and keep developing who you are, there are many times where either that boss that's corrupt or whatever will either be removed or you get moved. I've seen that happen in my life, but I've got to allow the journey to happen of my development and growth and welcome the season that I'm in. Many of you hate the season you're in. What would it look like to just embrace the season that you're in, knowing that it may not be, this isn't forever. You're on a journey and this is a chapter, but develop a rapport with your boss. Find ways, you can even ask your boss, find ways you can add value, find ways where you can contribute in a way that's meaningful to your boss's responsibility. And even with your coworkers. Now, with coworkers, the temptation is we can get lost in company gossip and negative discussion, right? It happens. I'm not here to be like, stop being so. I'm not here to lecture you about negativity. We all fall into it, right? But what I want to do is encourage you, don't allow yourself to get lost in it, because that negative tornado is not good for your mental health. It's not good. So you may want to be aware of certain people that you go, I'm going to have a boundary. I can only take so much of this person, because whenever around them, they just, there's some that just carry that, like, remember Pigpen? You just had like that cloud of dirt around him in the blanket, where you give yourself a sense of boundary. But yet, how can I have a healthy interaction? Well, in this area I can, but in these areas, when we talk about these issues, these things, that's not a place where I feel like it's good for my peace, because I'm working on me having peace of mind and connecting to God's with me and hope and working through. I don't need tons of other layers of this person over here, that person over here, just dumping all the time, right? So I also want to encourage you, don't be ashamed of your mental health struggle, being that you're in the workplace. But I think it's wise, don't broadcast it all the time. Don't feel that you have to. Sometimes people can be obsessive about their mental health and compulsive about sharing it, where they feel like they have to get their story out to everybody, or they have to get their struggle out. Well, it's because of this thing I have and this thing. You don't have to wear it on your sleeve, but you also don't have to be ashamed of it. See your mental health journey as a place in work where you're practicing how to cultivate a healthy mood, how to develop a healthy focus, right? and let it give you compassion for others who are struggling. That will position you to make a difference. A thing I want to share with you is don't look down at where you're at in work. Many people that I'll sit down and talk with, they look down because they feel like their job is small or insignificant or it's not that great. See it as a part of your journey. And I think that what happens to many of us is we get stuck because we need to just embrace where we are and make the best of where we are, knowing that there could be more opportunities ahead, because ideally, I believe God wants you to be in a place of work that's fulfilling. That, if somebody offered you, gave you, $10 million, as far as work, maybe you'd be doing pretty much the same thing or something, around that, or a job that you do even if you weren't paid, right? That's ideal, right? That's like this beautiful picture, right? But we want to get in the real world of where you're at. First, don't look down on where you're at. See the significance. There are people next to you that need what you carry. Doesn't mean force it on them, preach on it. There's things that you have to offer that they can be blessed by. And we can get so lost in our mental health struggle, we don't see the blessing that we can be. I've been there many times where I'm so in my head about what's going on with me, I don't realize I am being a blessing to others, and I need to be aware of that and appreciate that. But don't look down at where you're at. My first job was cleaning church bathrooms at 5 a.m. in the morning. Don't look down on that. There is beauty to be discovered in every season of your life. Now, your job is not your identity. And we live in a culture where people, they try to immerse their self-esteem in their work, right? And if they achieve and get this, and that never satisfies. Many people are trying to get a big platform or become an influencer. That does not heal the places in your heart. So your job is not your identity, but your job is where you practice your identity. It's where you practice who you are. Now, when you're at work, it's not that you're in performance mode. You're practicing who you are. Where instead of, you're learning how to not live out of pressure and stress, but learning to live from, I'm learning, I'm discovering, I'm developing, I'm growing, I'm learning how to relate to myself, I'm learning how to relate to other people because God's showing me his love for me and I see God with me and I'm learning in this process. I remember when I left a church that I'd worked at for about 12 years, I actually grew up in that church and was brought on staff and worked there for about 12 years in an official position capacity. And when I left to start a new ministry focused more towards what I'm doing now, I was so discouraged because I was working construction. I did some, home renovation, cleaning work and a bunch of different areas, right? And I thought, well, maybe I miss God, and then I worked for an online company. And so anyway, during those seasons, it was actually opportunities for me to realize that who I am was not a pastor. That's not my identity. That my identity is a son. I'm a child of God. I'm a son of my Father in heaven. That's who I am. But I had been involved in ministry since my teenage years, and I never really developed a sense of identity of who I am. Apart from that, I only knew doing ministry and was very void of who am I apart from that. And this is why many people get into midlife crisis and things like that, because they've immersed themselves so much in their work, they didn't know who they were. But your work is a place where you practice who you are. So I'm learning how to live as a son who is loved already. And I'm learning to practice that each day and demonstrate that. When I learn to live as a son, and in my material, Exposing the Rejection Mindset, there's some great precepts here that can help you as you dive into that. The difference between living as a slave versus living as a son, right? Because a son sees the family, sees belonging in the family, and knows how to live in love to bless the family. Whereas a spiritual slave is only out for self-preservation, only out what's in it for me, right? So making the transition from spiritual slavery into sonship gets reflected at the workplace. So I can look at a workplace and assess it fairly quickly in looking who has sonship mentality and who's living slavery mentality, right? Who has a sense of contribution, ownership, and value, There's a coffee shop that I go to on a regular basis, and there's a lot of young people that work there. And I can look and pick up on the ones who are like, they take ownership and they have value, they're adding value, and those that are like, I'm just checking in, checking out. So this is where see God, he's involved in your work journey, and you're learning to practice who you are and growing stronger out of the love that God has for you, right? So you can get my materials on identity at my topics page. If you go to markdejesus.com, if you go over to the topics tab, you'll see a whole identity section. You can go on there to get more on that. Another thing I want to say is walk in humility. As believers, we don't need to present this perfect Jesus fabrication. You don't have your life perfectly worked out. You have struggles too. Walk in humility, because what we need is an authentic journey. We've too long been presenting a message, and then meanwhile we have battles, but we're acting like we always have things together. So let me share with you where I think your focus can be. In the workplace, God, help me to grow in cultivating the fruit of the Spirit. Love, joy, peace. God, help me to walk in gentleness and kindness, meekness. Help me to practice self-control. Help me to live in that as I do my job with excellence, but that relationally, that's what I manifest, is that I operate in kindness. Do you know how meaningful it is to me to interact with a business, maybe even a drive-through, and someone is just manifesting kindness, where they show for a moment that they care? And this leads me to another thing that I want to exhort you in, is to show simple care for the workplace and the people that you serve. This right here sets you apart from everybody else. Just showing that you care. Just showing that the business you work at matters to you. Be on time. Ask how you can help. Look for ways to bless. And your attitude is contagious. Attitude is very contagious, right? I mean, you can just pull a room down with a really negative, depressed attitude that is like permeating the environment, right? But encouragement, kindness is very contagious. And what people need today, before you ever preach Jesus, is manifest genuine kindness. That they just know you care. That you actually care about the company you work for. And this right here sets people apart, because a lot of people just don't give two hoots about where they work. And as a place of self-encouragement, I found it very helpful for my mental health. Take moments to appreciate a job well done. God in the scriptures, in creation, in the book of Genesis, he would create and then step back and say, this is good. I think it's helpful in your life, any work, even in things you do at home or in your house or anything that you create, to step back. We get so nitpicky and perfectionistic and negative, to step back and go, job well done. There's something wonderful about saying, hey, you know what? We gave today a good go. Yeah, there was ups and downs. There was learning, because this cultivates gratitude. And gratitude is so important for mental health. It cannot be overemphasized. It is because when you focus on gratitude, you start looking for things you appreciate, and you tune into what you appreciate versus all the things that aren't happening or weren't happening. It makes you more present, right? Now, if your workplace is toxic, this is a real simple practical tip. I'm not going to sit up here in the clouds and just preach at you. When your workplace is toxic, I think a healthy thing to do is take advantage of your breaks. Now, I remember I worked with a business where a gentleman he painted private jets. And so it was an interesting experience, because you see these, jets of movie stars and people, like, oh, this is where this famous person sat, but he painted them and would do fix up paint jobs on these multi-million-dollar. It was very precise work. And I remember one of the guys I worked with, he was a smoker, and he'd worked there for a while. and he'd have his smoking break. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to take a smoking break. And I didn't smoke, but I said, I'm going to take a smoking break. And it gave me a moment of just recalibrating my emotions. Now, many people in their, coffee breaks or whatever breaks you get or lunch breaks, what do? We scarf down food, or, we shove coffee down, and we're scrolling through social media, right? Social media is the new cigarette break, right? You scroll. Now, I get it. You got to check your texts and see, is there somebody you need to get back to, whatever. But I want to encourage you, especially if you work in an environment where there's a lot of stress, a lot of pressure, take your breaks. What does it look like for you to recalibrate? It may be stepping out into nature and just letting the sun hit your face and just breathing. It may be if you have to go sit in your car, you just breathe for a moment and you play some worship music. Let it be something that feeds your emotional recalibration, because a lot of our mindless scrolling is no judgment. We all do it, but it doesn't refresh you. This is a time to discover what refreshes you. And that's where this guy who was taking cigarette breaks, I realized the value of taking deep breaths, right? Because he's sitting there going, and I'm like, why don't I just take a moment and do that? But I don't have to have nicotine coming into my system. I can just stand outside, and it taught me to appreciate nature in a whole new way, appreciate God, and appreciate pause, because God knows where you're working. And you need to, even after work, you find ways that especially those of you that work in mentally and emotionally charged arenas, compassion workers, right? Or you work in school system, or you work in a place where it's just like you feel that hostility all the time. After work, just don't get in your car and zone out and go home and check out. Maybe your ride home is a time where you decompress, you let go of certain emotions, you process through, be kind to yourself, right? I think that's a very, very important take home. I also find many people I'm coaching, work can be a great opportunity to take your mind off of obsessing about yourself, right? Because when you're there, you got a job to do. You got to focus on people. I even found for me that in the early days when I was doing one-on-one work with people, there'd be some days where I'm just not having a good day. It's just not going well. And I learned sitting down with somebody and helping them did two things. Took my eyes off of myself, because I found I was very introspective. And two, when I just listened and paid attention to someone's battle, it helped put some of my battles in perspective, because I was like, I see how they could struggle with that. I see how I could struggle with that too if I was in their shoes, right? So it helped put perspective into my life and my journey. So I'm not saying that now that's where it comes up in my work. I'm not saying that you have to be counseling somebody or something like that. But work takes your mind off, because you're serving people, you're helping people, and to have a servant mindset, but it can help you to stop introspecting and staring at yourself, because that's not a fruitful way to work through your mental health issues. The last thing I want to talk about is to walk a journey of fruitfulness, of just being faithful to your journey, because there's going to come a day where people will come to you and they will ask. What are they going to ask? They're going to ask of the hope that is within you. My recommendation for what ministry looks like is be faithful at your job. Let yourself grow in your mental health by just practicing who you are, learning to love and be loved, and appreciate a moment available that are connection, but don't force it, right? But don't force the gospel. I think we need to be strategic. And I think that we need to live in a fruitful way, because there will come times, whether it's perilous times or difficulties, where people's situations break down. Most of my ministry impact in people's lives, like in everyday life, I don't mean on YouTube or in everyday life, is just living my life, because when people hang around me, it eventually happens. They start sharing their struggle. They start sharing what they're going through, asking questions when they're ready, because mental health help, there's a similarity to receiving the gospel, is when you're ready. When you're ready to take it in. And I want to be ready to be a help when I'm asked. And a lot of times Christians are giving answers to questions that aren't being asked. And we're living lives that are not authentic, and people are rolling their eyes. And we need some recalibration. So let me bring a scripture passage here. It's found in Peter's writings in 1 Peter 3:13. He says, who is it who will harm you if you become followers of what is good? And he brings out the resistance that's there. Jesus said, they hate me, they're going to hate you. And we have to realize, our job isn't necessarily to get everyone to like us and to like everything about us. There's going to be that sense of tension of just being who we are and who is within us. He says, but even if you should suffer for righteousness' sake, you are blessed. And do not be afraid of their threats, nor be troubled. Right? Some people I feel like I got a people-pleasing thing going on. That we have to accept that, hey, there's going to be people that don't like us. And I don't need to add to it by being a jerk, right? But by default, even living a fruitful life, people are going to look at, there's going to be resistance to the Savior that lives within me, right? So don't be afraid and don't be troubled over this. And that helps us to go, okay, I'm not crazy. I'm not losing my mind here. But sanctify the Lord God in your heart. That word sanctified means set apart. Make it a treasure. Make it precious, right? That God is a treasure in my life. And he's a treasure that I'm not just blurting it out everywhere, right? Being super spiritual person. I'm holding it, I'm living it, letting the light shine. But there will be opportunities. Be ready to give a defense to anyone who asks you for a reason or ask you for the hope that is within you. That they are asking, there's something in you that they're asking about. And you'll know, there'll come a time, okay, now's the time to share. And share the fruit of your journey. Not that you've arrived or that you're perfect. Many Christians who preach Jesus act like, I asked Jesus into my life and my problems disappeared. And now I just live this amazing life and I have no struggles. And so he says, do that with meekness and with fear, a sense of reverence to who God is, but be meek. There's that tie into humility. Meekness is that strength, but it's under control. It has self-control into it. And so he says, having a good conscience. And what does that mean? That you're just living your life showing fruit, right? Developing your character, whether people see it or whether they don't see it. That who you are in public and private, you're just trying to walk out the ways of God. That when they defame you as evildoers, because then there's accusations that come against you. That when they try to revile your good conduct, that they'll be ashamed trying to attack you because you've been walking an authentic journey. And he says, for it's better if the will of God to suffer for doing good than for doing evil. That, hey, listen, in the workplace or in my life, if there is attack that happens, let it be because of my life following God, not because I got lost in immature goofiness. And God is gracious and he's growing us in our immaturity and in our goofiness. I thank God for that. But I pray these principles are a blessing to your life and your journey. I want to take a moment, if I could, to just read someone's email that came in actually this week about, and ties into the subject. I want to just give a couple feedbacks. His 19-year-old brother, and I'm praying for the young people that are young adults now that are moving into a continual rise of wickedness and just darkness that they're dealing with, that they'd have wisdom and be Daniels to be effective at their job. They don't have to compromise who they are, but they can walk effectively and be ready for the open doors that take place. Anyways, in one of your latest broadcasts about serving God in a world filled with strife, and you do want to take that, look up Mark DeJesus strife, and you'll see my broadcast and my teaching on that. That's important to what I'm sharing here too. You said something about work and that my colleagues are not my friends, but my coworkers. I'm a young guy, 19. I'm learning to work now. In the beginning, I had a burden on me to make these people like me and that I would be able to share the gospel with them. Now, many times the church tries to be liked. That's very different from loving people. Loving people doesn't mean you're a pushover. Loving people doesn't mean you do things to try to get them to like you. There is a difference. And it's revealed in the church, where the church is like trying to get the world to like it, to be appealing in such a way that it's showing friendship with the world rather than showing true love, because love appreciates truth. And so anyways, we become people pleasers, and we get lost in that, right? So I'm praying for wisdom for your life and your journey, because it's awesome. You're wanting to jump into the workforce. You're wanting to be passionate about your faith. In the beginning, I had a burden on me to make these people like me. I would be able to share the gospel with them. And if I didn't, then God would feel like, I would feel like God is far from me right now. Yeah, that's OCD combined with a rejection mindset. That God has a rejection mindset fuels this. God is far, he's close, he's far, he's close. And if I don't do my job, God's far away. So it makes you obsessive compulsive about sharing the gospel, which many who digest my content have that battle. After listening to your content, I'm aware that this was performance-based Christianity sprinkled with OCD. Well done. With your help, I've been able to let go of that now. But I wonder, what is my responsibility while at work? Lately, I've just focused on doing my job and being kind to my coworkers. Right on, brother. Stay on that. Stay on that. It doesn't sparkle on social media to just do your job and be kind, but that's the meat and potatoes of life. I would love to see these people experience the freedom I've gotten through Christ, and I'm aware that I can not do that. Only God's Spirit convict others. Yeah, fair enough. I would just want to ask if you have any advice for Christians in general in the workplace. I pray that what I shared today is a help. Personally, I haven't been able to talk much to my coworkers since most of them wear headphones while working, and sometimes even in break time. This makes it difficult for me to connect to them. And they are still young people around my age. They know I'm a Christian, and so far I've just been trying to shine the lights within me. So if they know you're a Christian, just let the light shine. Just let your fruit, just be a fruit dispenser. Just let yourself grow, and just let the fruit be dispensed of the fruit of the Spirit, showing how you respond to things. And that will give you opportunities. But don't let that compulsion take over of, I got to share. Is it my responsibility to share the gospel with him? Or is it more my goal to live the gospel in front of them? Yeah, I think you're answering your own question, because it's that second. Thank you so much for taking the time to read this. I appreciate some guidance for Christians in the workplace, because I haven't really found much on the internet. And you have a very gentle and gracious spirit, which is why I greatly appreciate your thoughts on this. Well, thank you for saying that you see that manifest for me, because a gentle and gracious spirit isn't necessarily my default setting. God's had to work that in my life. And he used tough seasons of work, maybe jobs I liked or didn't like, or seasons where I didn't feel like I was following, or I was in the dream that I thought I was going to be in. During the trenches, it's in those seasons that I actually got refined. And I continue to experience that refinement in my life. And so what's God saying in your current workspace? In what you can focus on. We tend to focus on what we can't control, but what can you focus on? And I pray that today was a blessing for your life and your journey. If it was, please click the like button, subscribe, share it with your friends, share it with your boss and coworkers, and say, you need to watch this right now, because this is what I'm trying to do. I'm just kidding. But it's an honor to be your brother from another mother. And Lord willing, and the creek don't rise, I'll bring some more insights for your healing and freedom journey. In the meantime, I'm out.